So we warmly welcome you to the session on decoding the adversarial military space domain, which brings an analytical lens to global industry, military space trends, and the emerging threat postures. This session will explore how shifting military doctrines, emerging counter-space capability, and the convergence of ISR cyber and space warfare are reshaping deterrence, and why India must strengthen integrated preparedness, technological superiority, and sustain investment in resilient space operations. And ladies and gentlemen, it is now a privilege to invite our keynote speaker onto the dais, Lieutenant General R.S. Raman, Director General of Military Intelligence. As DGMI, Lieutenant General Raman leads India's military intelligence architecture at a time when space-based ISR, strategic awareness, and domain integration are central to operational preparedness. And we invite our chair of the session, Mr. R.N. Prasher, I.A.S. retired, former chairman, Haryana Electricity Regulatory Commission. May I invite you, sir, to kindly grace the stage. Also inviting Lieutenant General R.S. Raman to kindly take his seat on this dais. Mr. R.N. Prasher, with vast administrative and regulatory experience, brings a governance perspective to strategic infrastructure policy shaping and institutional readiness, crucial when space becomes part of national security calculus. Sir, we are privileged to have you guide this session. And our distinguished moderator for this panel, we would like to invite Lieutenant General Rakesh Kapoor, retired, former Deputy Chief of Army Staff, who is a distinguished military leader with deep operational command experience. Lieutenant General Kapoor has been closely associated with doctrinal evolution and capability integration within the Indian Army. His insights and future battle space dynamics make him ideally placed to steer the high-level discussion. And now inviting our eminent panelist, Air Vice Marshal Rahul Gupta, Assistant Chief of the Air Staff Operations Space Air Headquarters, who plays a critical role in operationalizing India's space capabilities within the Air Force structure, integrating space into air and joint operations framework. Mr. Ashok Saxena, CEO of Space TS, who is a leader in the private space technology domain, brings industry insights into space situational awareness, technological resilience, and counter-space readiness. Lieutenant Colonel Harkamal Sidhu, retired, Vice President and Head, Digital ISR and Cyber Assurance, C2C Advanced Systems. With a strong background in ISR and cyber assurance, Lieutenant Colonel Sidhu bridges operational military experience with advanced digital and space-linked system integration. So, ladies and gentlemen, we begin the proceedings of this session with a keynote address, and let's put our hands together to welcome once again for the keynote address Lieutenant General R.S. Raman.
Thank you very much for inviting me for DevSat. While I was sitting for the previous session, I could sense the quality of the discussions which happen here. Before I start and giving my thoughts on adversarial capabilities, just a point to ponder. When we talk about adversaries in the context of space, are we taking the terrestrial adversaries to the space, or there is an entire new hue of adversaries when we talk about space? Just to amplify what I am trying to mean, in the space you have four kinds of possible space assets. One is yours, one is that of the terrestrial adversary, which we understand. One is of a neutral country. And the last is of a national interest-based friendly country. So while it is very clear what your own satellites and your adversary satellite is going to do, what if a neutral country satellite provides information of your territory to an adversary? How do you bracket him? What if a national interest-based friend of yours, who otherwise gives you information, holds back the information when it is critical to you? Are they also adversaries? It's a point to ponder. I don't have answers to it. But all it does is it reinforces the need to have sovereign assets on which we have control. But while I say that, it is not that until we have that, we have nothing. Something is better than nothing. So until that happens, we need to bridge our capabilities with what is available and ensure that there are safeguards and redundancies built in. Now I'll come to the topic proper. Space is no longer an enabler along the margins. We all are convinced, I think. Even the previous sessions would have spoken about it. It is at the central, it forms the centrality of military power. China, by its investments in space, has converted itself into tangible military capabilities. And China is not venturing into space for mere scientific curiosity or as a matter of prestige. It remains its cornerstone for its ambition for global power. So it is integrated into the larger framework. The real impetus to the Chinese space capabilities happened after the Chinese National Space Agency was established in 1993. Then the scaling up of the Long March launch vehicle, the progressive upgradation of those, and systematically he then built his human space exploration missions, his Chang'e lunar exploration program, the Tianwen Mars exploration program, and recently the space station, Tiangong Space Station, which has been active since 2022. Two events which triggered that he takes space seriously. One, during the first Gulf War around 1991, when he saw the centrality of an informatized battlefield, much of it enabled by space, he thought he must develop that. The second was during the 1996 Taiwan Strait crisis, when of the three ballistic missiles that he fired, two of them failed. And he was convinced that this was due to the spoofing possibly done by the US, so he understood the vulnerability of being dependent on the foreign space assets. By late 2025, we will not go exactly on the figures, but see the trend lines, what it tries to project. By late 2025, he has about 1,300 satellites, of which about 501 constitute the more familiar ones of electro-optical, SAR, and the ELINT ones. He launches about 60 to 70 launches every year. He has got 45 satellite constellation, the Beidou constellation, and his LEO-based communication constellation, which he intends to rival the Starlink constellation of 7400, that provides and supports the other form of constellation very intimately. Can we have the slide, please? Next. Broadly, to save time, the first figure is what has launched, and the second one is what he has projected that he would want to achieve. It all looks quite exaggerated, maybe, but his intent is clear. 135 out of 13,000, 108 of 15,000. The Huang 3, he intends to launch 10,000, 64 of the 6,000. And in the constellations, he has already filed the filings for the spectrum for about 1,93,000. This is all exaggerated, it appears, but the intent is not lost to anybody. Next, please. Yeah, we'll wait for this. While we are on the satellite constellations, the recent achievement in establishing his space station, it reflects technological maturity and strategic confidence that he has attained. A fully modular satellite station, permanently served by crew, and it will last a lifetime, it will last beyond the lifetime of the International Space Station, which ends in 2030. And he would have access to long space mission totally dedicated to himself. The better part of this satellite, this space station is, it's got a robotic arm, auxiliary manipulators, which is capable of capturing, repositioning, and assembling satellites in space. So the servicing of the space, an extension of life of the satellites in space, is a near possibility that he has already achieved. In the RPO missions, next please. These are some of the mischief or the devious actions that he has undertaken in space. In the first text box, it says the Xinjiang 21 satellite docked onto otherwise inert satellite and made suspicious movement. In the second one, the robotic arm was able to perform hostile maneuvers even in the geostationary orbit. In the third one, it simulated and spoofed its location so that people couldn't track it. Yeah, next please. In the counter space capability, he has the entire stack available to him: the kinetic A stack, the co-orbital satellites, energy weapons, EW jamming, cyber operations. It's out there in the media. The China had in the past laser dazzled the US satellites temporarily without damage. These actions are calibrated, reversible, deniable, but yet they convey a strategic intent. I won't go on to the structure. More importantly, I want to cover something about Pakistan because that is less spoken about, but the intent appears to be more resolute now. Of the 10 satellites he has, 3 of them are going to end their life by the end of this year. It came as a surprise that he launched his first sounding rocket even before we had launched, 17 months before we had launched. But somehow he lost his way en route. In December 2023, Pakistan Parliament approved the National Space Policy and Pakistan's space activity rules focusing on innovation. The policy outlines key functions including formulating the national space policies, space programs, designing satellites, and maintaining a register of space objects. In his space vision, he envisions 30 ISR satellites with a revisit of 2 hours in the next decade. The plan includes developing Pakistan remote sensing constellation. 4 of the 5 are already there up in the sky, 2 EOs, 1 hyperspectral and 1 SAR. Pakistan has launched the PakSat MM1 in May of 2024, providing KU, KA, and X-band communication, ensuring strategic communication capabilities for Pakistan Armed Forces, masquerading as disaster management service. Another communication satellite, PakSat-2, is planned to be launched in 2027. Before that, 3 other Earth observation satellites are also planned to be launched. Over and above, with feverish pitch post-Op Sindoor, imagery from commercial Chinese satellite constellation of XR-11 and SuperView are being obtained. Pakistan has signed a $406 million deal with PiSat China to help it build the integrated satellite system of 20 microsatellites, which is part of the 28 satellite development expression of intent that he had projected with the Chinese. Pak aims to set up the assembly, integration, and testing of a facility of a Phaeton class satellite in Lahore. Pakistan Air Force is also working on 4 nanosatellite launch with the help of Messrs. Virtual Lab Italy towards ELINT monitoring. Pakistan has, as part of its collaboration with the Chinese, has led the International Lunar Research Station program and multi-nation Asia-Pacific ground-based optical space object observation with the observation node at Sonmiani, Pakistan. Pakistan astronauts are being trained by the Chinese for the mission to the Chinese space station. Pakistan aims to land an indigenous lunar rover, though part of the Chang'e mission of the Chinese. At the last, I would also like to touch a little on the Turkey's space endeavors, because that is also a place which is of concern to us now. Under the Turkey's Uzay Agency established in 2018, Turkey's space efforts are certainly coordinated. The Turksat constellation provides coverage across Europe, Africa, Middle East, and part of Asia. Turksat 6A launched in 2024 is Turkey's first indigenously developed communication satellite. In Earth observation, Turkey operates military and civilian imaging satellites, the Gupta-2 and the IMECE, delivering high-resolution imagery for reconnaissance, disaster management, and cartography. Turkey has indigenously designed the electro-optical payload, which is given to Pakistan, and satellite bus and the assembly integration facilities at Ankara. In future, it endeavors its first mission of astronauts were sent aboard the International Space Station in 2024. Turkey now fields an active multi-satellite fleet, indigenous satellite manufacturing, secure communication, independent Earth observation assets, and expanding ambition in deep space and launch technologies, positioning it as an emerging strategically capable mid-tier space power. Thank you very much.
Thank you, General Raman. He's really brought out certain critical aspects of our competitors. And one significant takeaway that we get from what the Director General Military Operations has said, he's very astutely crafted that there are no more northern borders and western borders. It is one front and multiple adversaries, and there is collusivity happening at the background. We have a great panel here today, and I must thank SIA for this well-crafted panel, because the way we're going to discuss it, the panel is very well comprised. We have Mr. Prasher as the chair, Air Vice Marshal Rahul Gupta, who is a practitioner, who's the Assistant Chief of Air Staff Operations for Space, Mr. Ashok Saxena, who's Chief Executive Officer for Space T5, and we've got Colonel Harkamal Sidhu on my right, who's the Vice President of C2C Advanced Systems. Before we go to the panel, I'll request Mr. R. N. Prasher, sir, for any of your opening remarks that you would like to set the stage with.
General Kapoor. We've had an excellent introduction by General Raman. I would just like to highlight 3-4 points for consideration of the learned panel here. When we talk of resilience, the question is of endurance also. So far, we have been mostly relying on chemical propulsion. And that's a very big limitation on endurance. Finally, the satellites have to be brought down because the fuel is finished. And there's enough indication that it's moving towards ionic propulsion. That requires a lot of energy. Can the solar panels provide that kind of energy? But more important is that war is shifting more towards radiation, directed energy, whether it is lasers or microwaves, for use both as offensive systems as well as for defensive systems. We have now almost working laser systems, ground-based. And the limitation is again energy. They require a whole lot of energy. There's no way your solar panels, whatever be their size, can provide that kind of energy. So we should simultaneously consider whether we are moving fast enough in that direction, because India always keeps playing the catch-up game, and the time is past. Either we leapfrog or we fail. Now, nations have put micronuclear reactors in their satellites for energy. Are we ready for that? Our nuclear power corporation has come up with small modular reactors, but they are still large and heavy, and work is required to reduce them to the micro scale. So that should also be a focus of attention, that we need so much energy in space to have endurance, to get rid of the limitations of the chemical fuel, and to operate the directed energy offensive and defensive systems. With those remarks, I would now hand over back to the moderator.
Thank you very much, sir. You make a very critical point here about, how do we power our space systems, and, how do we create that degree of resilience. But, one thing that we would definitely like to talk here is, how do we, deal with our competitors who are taking a leap forward in most of these issues. When we look at the military domain, I think the space segment is critical to conduct any form of multi-domain operations. And if multi-domain is the flavor of the day, whether kinetic, non-kinetic, the centrality of the space segment needs no elaboration. The other thing which I thought put it up in a little bit of a preamble is the Indian space policy, which has come out in 2023, is reflective of a huge amount of inclusiveness. And therefore, this panel is important. It opens a large segment to the private sector. And any nation that has achieved some degree of leadership in the space segment has attained it through a civil-military fusion. When you just take the example of the United States of America, they have got about something like over 8,600 satellites. 7,000 satellites are private-owned. And what strategic commitments they have to the nation is also needs no elaboration to that fact. when we look at the space market today, the global space market, the global space market ranges around a little over 600 billion US dollars. And the Indian contribution to the global space market is about 1.8 to 2 billion US dollars. So I think there is a huge amount of catch-up that needs to be done. Now, I want to go to this panel now, and as a practitioner, I want to go to Air Vice Marshal Rahul Gupta, and then I will seek the views of the DGMI also. When you look at the Indian space segment and the structures that have evolved over the years, is there a degree of adequacy? Or do you think there is a need for evolution? And what should that evolution be?
Thank you so much, sir. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real honor to be here with you. I'm relatively new to the game, but I've been a user of the space segment for a very, very long time. As far as the organization is concerned, I can just draw a parallel to the size of a room. If you have a room which can house only 20 people, your guest list will be only 20 people. If you make a room which is the size of 100 people, those 20 people will grow into 100. So let not the size of our organization restrict our aspirations. Rather, the size of the organization should allow our aspirations to grow. With that, the chair has already brought out the inadequacy of the organizational structure which exists in the country. And while the efforts are on with the new space policy and the in-space being made, NCIL being made as the commercial arm, there is a lot more which needs to be done to probably harness the civilian sector as much. Probably civil-military fusion is something which the chair will discuss later. I will just restrict myself to the structures which exist in the military domain. The Defence Space Agency was formed with the intention of coordinating the efforts of the three services. As most of you may be aware, in 2025, September last year, we have released the Joint Space Doctrine, which lays out that space, along with the other domains of air, land, sea, and cyber, is the fifth domain of warfighting, which indicates the seriousness and the importance that we place on the usage of space for future warfighting. While the DSA has been fairly instrumental in being able to coordinate the activities of the three services and interacting with the industry as such, but like I said, the size of the room should not dictate the size of aspirations. There is definitely need for DSA to become from a coordinator to a driver of space initiatives, and therefore there is scope for increasing the size of the Defence Space Agency. When we look worldwide and the way the developing countries or developing militaries have structured their space forces, there is definitely a lot of good practices and inspirations that we can take from them, whether it be the French Aerospace Force or the creation of a space command by the US. So there is definitely a need. The other countries have realized that it is a domain which cannot be ignored, which is going to be instrumental for future warfighting. Therefore, the structures reflect that aspiration and it reflects the intention to harness this particular capability. I will just leave you with a thought that, do we really believe that the common line is going to be the defining boundary between air and space? Historically, we've had fixed-wing aircraft which have transcended this boundary. With weapon systems coming through the space above the height of 100 kilometers, there will be a need to fight this warfare above the common line. Is there a case for fusing the air with the near space and probably in the near or distant future, fusing it with space itself? Or do we restrict ourselves to having an air force and a space force? Thank you so much for the chair, sir. And that's all from my side.
Gen Raman, I'm going to come to you. You deal at the strategic level. And when we look at our national structure, and space is really not an additive domain any longer. It is integral for conduct of operations. In fact, it is integral to conduct of daily life. Multiple users are here sitting opposite us, and some of them don't even relent. The usage of that device, which keeps going to space and back. So, aspirationally, what should be the national structure be if we have to take the lead or if we have to match up to our competitors? There is ISRO, which is heavily civilian based, and there are huge amount of military requirements. So what is the aspirational structure that you look for?
Thank you, sir. I think all these questions and apprehensions are coming, and we are debating about the structure, because the outcome that we are looking for is not forthcoming. We don't have the capability. So what I see is the process which is so lethargic. We all have identified what is the kind of capability we require. I don't think anybody from the three services or even across the other agencies differ on that. But it is the process to reach it. I don't think there is much that we can do about the structure. But first, I would recommend very strongly is, if we have a capability in our mind, let us first get that capability. You initially can't get that entire capability by your indigenous resource. Let us put the capability, even if we have to collaborate with other nations, build in redundancy. Then progressively retaining that capability, reduce the foreign content and increase the domestic content. Because in this linear fashion, if we are going to progress, then we are chasing that utopian world where the capability will be built entirely by your indigenous capability, which is going to take time. But the capability is required for tomorrow, for the next Sindoor, for the next eventuality which might happen. So I would recommend that we all in union should have the capability up as early as possible. Then we can debate upon the indigenous content and the foreign content. Thank you, sir.
Gen Raman brings a very significant point that capability development in the space segment is critical to us to match up to our competitors. And Mr. Ashok Saxena, you are one of those agents that the nation has to build that capability. You have that ability to create that capability. So are you facing some impediments to create that capability? Or what is your recommendations to build that capability?
Well, thank you. That's a good question. First, excuse me, I'd like to thank SIA for giving me the opportunity to be part of this preeminent panel in front of distinguished delegates, Now, 1 year ago, I started by saying that he who rules space shall rule the modern world. And that was true last year, and that is true this year. And then there is the duality of space, okay? We all talk about space for defense, but it's equally important that we need to have defense of space, And the things that we need to do are all these counter space technologies that we have been talking of and will be talking of, Now, if we come to the impediments, or I'm going to just focus on answering, okay, is if we focus on what are the impediments or what can the industry do, the first thing is that I wholeheartedly agree with AVM here that we should empower the Defense Space Agency. They should not just be a collector of requirements. They should be able to actually procure satellites and systems from other places, That's one thing. The other thing is the amount of investment that the government does in R&D has to increase, And R&D does not mean taking something from TRL-1 to TRL-4 or TRL-4 to TRL-9. It involves actually running missions in space. For example, in the US, they're coming up with new data relay satellite systems, okay? And they have awarded 4 companies contracts to actually do the research and deploy these systems in space. So they are actually doing R&D in space and not just on the ground, And they are doing it through multiple people. Another thing is the concept of insurance, okay? There is no insurance capability in India, okay? So if you build a satellite and the launch vehicle fails, you lose the satellite. You also have to pay for launch costs the next time you want to launch the satellite. And the third impediment is the business opportunity lost cost, okay? Because once you are 1 or 2 years behind building a new satellite, then you've lost a lot of potential business with international or local businessmen. Another thing is the number of satellites. I mean, it's good to see that we are going to have tens of satellites doing reconnaissance type of or intelligence gathering thing, but we need hundreds, okay? We need, and maybe even thousands, you know. So somehow we have to have the outlook that in order to launch all these satellites, and one of the things that we can do as a deterrent is actually apply for orbital and ITU slots for these satellites. Now, we may not do that, but just the fact that we are applying will be a deterrent to all our enemies, you know. And then, of course, there's the procurement technique of doing turnkey procurements, in the sense that the government contracts for services renders, and they don't pay for milestones along the way or developing hardware or software, but we have turnkey procurements, you know. So I think, I have a few more on the list, but these are the higher ranking suggestions that I would offer, you know.
Sir, Mr. Ashok Saxena, sir, you know, you bring in this point about research and development. Multiple private players keep talking about research and development. And willy-nilly, at every stage, this responsibility is always shifted to the government. Now, when you look at the space segment, which has multiple users, government is just one user. There are so many civilian users of space. What is restricting the private enterprise to invest in research and development? Because there are multiple users. The other point is, when we look at the Indian ecosystem, the private industry is very often focusing only on payloads. What about the other segments of the to build a space ecosystem within the nation? Your quick views on that, and then I will go to Colonel Harkamal for his views on this aspect.
Well, I think in terms of R&D, in other countries, the R&D is conducted by primarily, but not always, by large companies, okay? So we have a number of startups who don't have the depth of money in their pockets in order to do the R&D. And the other really associated point is that the Indian venture capital system is really not tuned for space type of investment. I mean, if you're looking for the large amount of money that is actually required to do R&D for space systems, one has to go outside India, unfortunately. So the VCs are just not investing the type of money that is required to develop satellites and do R&D for space systems in India.
A quick one on that before I come to Colonel Harkamal. Is there a case in point that agencies like SIA should create a space consortium, get this startup ecosystem together so that they don't compete but collaborate? We'll just keep that thought there, and I will throw it back to the audience after a while. But Colonel Harkamal, while I will request you to answer the aspect of R&D from the private industry, you are just the right person who I wanted to ask this question. You are a former uniformed personnel, now into a space segment in the private world. How, we all talk about civil-military fusion. How do we create that civil-military fusion as far as the space segment is concerned?
Thank you, sir. Am I audible, please? So first of all, I would like to thank General Pannu sir and Anil Prakash sir for having given me this opportunity. Just to answer what General Kapoor has asked, I'll start it from miracle. Okay, so it's not that dictionary word which you normally hear. If you omit the last E, it stands for the medium infrared A, advanced chemical laser. So this was an experiment which was conducted by US in the year 1997. It failed miserably. Reason? They want the laser beam to destroy the satellite. Why I'm covering this? I want to give the perspective from the private point of view. And if you have got keen interest in the space, February month itself was very important, the one in which we are sitting right now. There are two important things which has happened. Firstly, why that miracle experiment failed? Because the crystal which was there to generate the laser was not able to sustain the power which was supposed to be linked. So in the month of February only, this year, now only, this month only, there was a new invention which took place. Anyone can guess the name of that particular crystal, 60 mm in dia, which was made? Anyone? Anyone heard of borium gallium selenide? It's called BGSE also. Yeah, this year itself, this month itself, it was invented. And after that, what has happened? A new particle has also got invented. It's called the new crystal. It is called ARF, or ammonium roxoborate. What's the difference? Why I'm asking about these terms? Because these are the things which match the today's topic, adversarial impact. The first one, which was there, it has given rise to 500 megawatt of power. That is the laser which is able to blind the satellite. Not only blind it, it will be able to destroy the satellite, sitting right from the ground station when the beam has been projected onto the satellite. Where is it operating? Militarily, what's good for us? 5 micrometer of wavelength, because it is right enough. It can escape the vapor effect. It can escape the foliage effect, and it will be able to directly hit the satellite over there. So what sir has asked, now all these inventions which are being done, these are being done in the private sector. The government has never been the developer of a particular technology. In the past years, maybe at some point of time it used to be. But nowadays the government role is to regulate the technology, especially the disruptive technologies. So what is our, I understand that as far as the government, since I was the part of National Security Council Secretariat also. So that was my bread and butter, making the policy and enforcement of the policies. So what is required? What is there in the space ecosystem if we ask? 3 important things: the space policy 2023, NBF rules 2024, and 3 important standards. I called it P3536, P3536. Why? Why we say that I'm from Northeast India, I'm from Northern India, I'm from Southern India? Because MHA has divided India into 6 parts. Likewise, P, which is a standard given by IEEE, P33536 has divided space into 5 segments. So what are those? The ground, space, the link between them 3, the user, and the interface. Now the problem comes with this interface. What the last panel was telling was, they described about the Viasat thing which has happened. Yes, today today the Russo-Ukraine war has started, 24th of February 2022. And for the military strategists, it has opened very, very, very good and lucrative avenues in space as well in cyber. Whether it is the disrupting the ground station systems with the help of acid rain or the acid pour, or it is targeting the infrastructure across the world. The 5th dimension, that is the cyber, has got the capability to do all on 4 other domains. We are here to discuss the 4th domain today, 4th dimension. So this is one. Secondly, the ecosystem in India is still evolving. In space also, if you see, there is a cyber security index which is being followed. Since I'm from cyber background, I can talk of that. In ITU, we have got something like the Cyber Security Index. So there are certain rules which are to be followed. So the nations across the world should be classified. He's in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. I think such a thing should start for space also. So PPP, that is the public-private partnership, is there, need to go to the next level. Till now, the space was restricted to agencies. Space was restricted to agencies. Who has opened it? Elon Musk. And the NASA, which was so many years old, I hope you are aware when he started off, he was not given the designs. He got it from Russia. And he has made something which NASA is also proud of today. So I think we have also taken a lead in this direction. General Pannu has launched the Space Club of India, I think last month or so. So there is a requirement of getting out the silos and getting into the new world where the technology changes by day and by night. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Very valuable points. Before I go back to the panelists for one last thought, and that last thought cannot exceed a sentence, we go to the chair of the panel, sir, for some of your comments which you wanted to.
4 different contending things are there. There is the investment part, including that on R&D. There is the profit part. There is the security part. And there is the MNC part. I'll take the last first. Multinational corporations, by the very definition, do not have a nationality. They are extra-national. Even if part of it is based in your country, they are extra-national. And so, their overlap with security is a huge issue that has to be taken note of. So when you talk of civil-military fusion, it's a very good thing. It's happened all over the West. That overlap has to be seen. The overlap of MNCs with national security. As far as the profit is concerned, unfortunately, even the government organizations are not immune to that. There has been tussle between armed forces and ISRO on bandwidth, and profit has played a role. So, harmonizing these 4 things is quite a tough task, but a necessary one, a sufficient condition before we can solve any of these 4 issues. Thank you.
So, very, very significant points. And I think we'll reflect more on them at lunch and beyond. And you made some very, very significant points. And particularly about the point between the ISRO and the armed forces, sir. One quick last thoughts on it. All the panelists, I'll go to Gen Raman first on space. Yeah, last thought.
I think the gap between us and the adversary is only widening. We all, like what we discussed, we have to put our act together.
Your mic is not on.
We need to put our act together, and like I said before, the quintessential thing is we have to put the capability up as early as possible. Otherwise, not only in the military domain, even in other fields, we would be found lacking, and it will severely impact even when we are, advancing toward Viksit Bharat 2047. Without space, I can't imagine that being achieved. So we need to put the capability as early as possible.
So, the General Raman talks about capabilities as critical. Air Marshal Rahul Gupta, your last thought on it?
So you said one sentence, any limitation on the number
One
of
sentence?
words in a sentence?
Not more than 10 words.
Okay, sir. So whether you call it civil-military fusion or military-civil fusion, that's the way ahead. Capability is to be the driver. Capabilities that we require is the driver. Innovation from the civilian industry and implementation by the security forces.
So I'm just building up this. capabilities through civil-military fusion, and innovation from private industry, and regulation through security agencies. I'll go to Mr. Ashok Saxena.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
One last thought on space, sir.
Oh, well, first of all, I'm very happy that our company is working on many of the things that General Raman talked about that the Chinese are doing, As a follow-on thing, I would say that when we talk about R&D or funding, we need to get into new technologies which are like countermeasures or counter warfare, both defensive and offensive. And I know that some of us, I see, who will agree or disagree with the offensive, but we take a leaf from the book of France, okay? They said if anybody interferes with the operation of your satellite and you take offensive action, that's called active defense, So as a doctrine, we need to adopt the concept of active defense. We need to fund R&D so that it can be used for both defensive and offensive space warfare that is being practiced by or planned by different countries. 4 countries have built ASAT weapons and 8 countries are working on them, additional.
So far we've come to capabilities through civil-military fusion, doctrines are important. I go to Colonel Harkamal. Last thought, not more than 10 words.
Sir, if you ask me, it is the culture which needs to be changed. When you heard of space last, or in your career, once you're in college, maybe not. Maybe when you are in profession, I heard it in 45, maybe yes, one odd subject on satellite, we have read it in this thing. And what defines the culture? The awareness. So that's why I have already brought out there is a need for having built the culture through awareness. So we should break the silos. It should be taught in schools. It should be part of the curriculum in colleges. And that's why we'll be able to progress. Few words only.
Thank you. So it is capabilities through civil-military fusion, doctrines are important, and you have to build a culture for innovation and skills. So just listening to this panel, if we were to revisit the space policy from a security aspect, I just doodled these things down. I think what we need in our space policy is space itself. And space is an acronym. The S stands for strategic skills, what he talked about, the culture, the innovation. The P stands for persistent availability. So whether you have to build counter capabilities or whichever persistent availability is required. The A stands for adaptive technologies. As technologies change, quickly adapt and bring them in, whether you want quantum safe space communication, and these segments need to be interfaced. And the C speaks about cohesion. Civil, military, whatever you have to do, the cohesion is required. And the E stands for, if we have to compete with our competitors, there has to be an edge focus. With this, we come to the end of this panel discussion. If any of the audience has some very serious comments to make and forego lunch, we are happy to listen.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. Let's put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for those valuable discussions and all those valuable insights shared in this session. As I request our session chair, Mr. R.N. Prasher, to kindly do the honors of presenting mementos to our distinguished dignitaries on the panel. If we begin with our eminent keynote speaker, Lieutenant General R.S. Raman. Thank you, sir, for all those valuable insights shared in your keynote address, giving a wonderful start to this session. We present to our moderator of this session, Lieutenant General Rakesh Kapoor. Thank you, sir, for wonderfully moderating this session and almost concluding it on time. We present to Air Vice Marshal Rahul Gupta. To Mr. Ashok Saxena. And to Lieutenant Colonel Harkamal Sidhu. And I would like to invite on stage Mr. Anil Prakash, DG SIA-INDIA, to kindly do the honors of felicitating our distinguished chair. And ladies and gentlemen, before you all proceed for lunch, I have few announcements to make. First and foremost, the next session will begin sharp at 15 minutes past 2. We request everyone to be seated few minutes before that. And ladies and gentlemen, the lunch has been organized at the exhibition area for all our delegates. You may kindly proceed on the level below for the lunch for all the delegates, and all our VIPs, seniors are invited to join for lunch next to the B2B area. We would also like to inform that I.A.S has organized a booth at the B2B area. Also, ladies and gentlemen, please do not forget to visit the exhibition during the lunch break. And as announced earlier, you may register for the B2B slots. Each will be given 30 minutes on first come, first served basis. So enjoy your lunch and kindly be back in time for the next session, which commences sharp at 2:15. Thank you.